So today I'm just gonna give a brief about some of the plants that can be used for food. How many of you have eaten some native edibles recently? Like, what have you eaten?
Morels.
That's good. I don't have it here, so that's a good. And you?
Oh, recently, mint.
Mint?
Your Dittany crackers. See, last week I made root beer from the sassafras.
That's
It
nice.
tasted good?
Yeah, that's delicious.
Yeah, I had it for the first year last year. This year, in the spring, it was just lovely. We'll talk a little bit more about it. So anything new?
Chanterelles and then blackberries.
Oh, okay.
Blackberries, yeah.
Maybe we're not gathering mushrooms for David Tilka event. So maybe if you have something to spare, feel free. Because if even if you just want to bring a sample, because we don't with mushrooms I know that it takes, you have to be right there to gather them. Any other plant that you want to talk about?
I had daylily blossoms.
I'm sorry,
Daylily blossoms?
I have eaten those. And do you eat them dry or fresh?
Actually, I sauteed them. They're really good. And the hairy mountain is good.
And Emily?
Persimmon cookies. And
Yeah.
Ready?
From last year, we gathered persimmons. I mean, my refrigerator, probably half of the freezer had persimmons this year. So I already processed the pulp, and so we managed to do a good recipe today with ice cream made with persimmons.
I ate an nasturtium.
I'm sorry, nasturtium. Oh yeah, those are tasty. Okay.
Sumac is really blooming their buzz right now.
Yeah, the fruit, the
Is that
berries.
when they're ready to?
Yeah, I'll show you some of the plants. Again, I won't be able to talk very much about it, but I like to know what you already know. Probably you can give the presentation, or we can all together give a nice presentation and talk about the things we eat. But I just briefly, with native plants, you can eat anything. Same thing as with crops. You can eat leaves and stems, like from wild onion and wild leek. Fruits and seeds, that is probably the most used part of the native plants, especially for us. Our highlight is persimmon, our star fruit, because it's so common in our area. This year we're gonna have papas that someone here in Jeff City has lots of papas that is gonna donate. So for David Tilka, hopefully if the fruits are ready, we'll be making some ice cream. And then you can use some of the fruits or rhizomes. And we'll talk of, I just want to mention one, like Jerusalem artichoke, that we don't, it's a native plant, but we don't really eat it. Sometimes because we don't know the plant. And flowers, we have been eating elderberry flowers, common milkweed, violets, even red bud. And I'll explain.
Dr. Nadia, do we have enough time for the passion fruit ever to mature?
I had it one time in a greenhouse that was really hot in the summer, so it started blooming earlier. Because we are a little bit too north from its range, they might not, because like I have plants blooming all the time in my yard. And it depends on the year that you get. I have gotten fruits that are edible. They can be eaten. They never change colors. They're always green. And one that everybody is talking about recently is elderberry. I don't know if you have tried the juice that is prepared for that, and you probably in wine.
My father makes great elderberry wine.
So maybe all those things that we're talking about, maybe if you want to share, well, maybe wine not, we won't be able to have wine for our event. But maybe outside of the university. We can meet at McClung Park. So what we have here at Lincoln, there is some research that is going on as part of the MU extension in Mount Vernon. And they were just evaluating different sources of elderberries. They were very, some of them were really susceptible to insects, especially mites. So it's like at this point, I mean, there has to be someone that is tolerant at least, and it's what they are doing now. There is a producer that is doing that now, but some of the sources are very susceptible. And what happened is that they are, I mean, I'm assuming because they are grown as monocultures. You have to mix other plants in between, like maybe what we call trap crops. So they will bring the trap crops will be eating the plants, and so they can leave the elderberry alone. But there have been some successes. Maybe this is not working. Okay. And I did mention that I'm from El Salvador. Some of you know. And I'd like to compare what I see here and when I go there. And just recently in June, I went to give a presentation. I went to visit my family, but I gave a presentation about the Native Plants program here in Missouri, and how what we are doing here, it could be applied in El Salvador. In El Salvador, we have so many native plants that we already eat, and I'll show you some. But sometimes people still the same, like here, people think that they're weeds because they don't know them. And one of them, it was a great surprise for me. When I was in the volcano, San Salvador volcano, it's right where, next to where I live, it wasn't maybe like 10 miles from my house. An elderberry was growing. I haven't been able to identify the species, but it just looks like ours. So it could be that it had been introduced, or elderberry has a big range of distribution. When I talk to people about all the uses of elderberry here, and that we recently even had a conference that it was only about elderberry. It was offered by MU. And so, I mean, I like elderberry, but I didn't feel like going to learn just everything from the world about elderberry. But researchers are working on that because it's really a cash crop, becoming a cash crop. So this is how it looks in El Salvador. And I should have asked you, I should have put the sources, but you see they look alike, the flowers. And the leaves just look alike, so I'm assuming that it's the same species that has been introduced. But there is a chance for people to use it there. Now, wild leek is a plant that is being grown now. There is a farm in Kansas City that is growing it as a crop. But at this point, it's really more like a niche crop. But we have it here on campus. I think let's see, I had a sample with me. I'll find it. But it's, as you see there, it can be, it starts growing early in the year, in the spring. And sometimes the reason, let's see, if you see there, the distribution is very scattered in Missouri. But everybody thinks, those that know it, that probably people just don't know the plant. And yeah, because it looks like it's something else because it's so prolific and it grows everywhere. And once it's grown, it just looks like it's an invasive plant because it's all you see in the spring. But it has a white flower. It's blooming right now. We have it in the garden. Maybe if we have time, you can see it. We have it growing in a raised bed.
Maybe when you guys leave, we have 5 beds in the community garden that have native edibles in it. So if you're interested, before you leave in that parking lot, I can show you those 5 beds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's what we're trying to do, to grow it as a crop. The bulbs are edible, the leaves are edible, but because it's a perennial plant, of course, if you pull it, you just get rid of the plant. So one thing that we are suggesting is that you just use the leaves. And actually, in one of the recipes, I put it in the tamale pie. You just cut it on top, and hopefully you can, or everybody can get a piece. And you can, I mean, the flavor and the smell is like a mix of garlic and onion. Very mild, but in some places they call it like the stinky plant because it's too, some people don't stand garlic, so they won't like wild leek. and so there are other, another important thing about this plant is that it grows in the shade. So if you have a place, it has to be moist but not wet. So if you have a good spot where nothing else grows, you might be able to add some compost and grow it as a crop. The uses are similar as onion. And here is the raised bed with the leeks this year. So some of them, not all of them, bloom. We established these plants from seedlings in Missouri Wildflowers we're selling, so they don't have any left because we got them all. But so we're trying to grow from seed. We ordered some seed. By the way, I have to give it to you. And we were trying to grow it. But one thing about this wild leek is that you have to sometimes to wait 2 years for the seed to germinate. But if we learn about it, we learn how to do it, I think it should be a good crop for us. And everybody should have it in their garden, in the backyard. And the first time I gathered, I used it to make a potato casserole. It was just simple. Just mix it in with the leaves. It was really tasty. And one important thing that is very good source of vitamin A and C, chromium and selenium, which I don't know exactly what it's for, but I know that we all need.
Selenium has a lot to do with your
I'm sorry?
Selenium, it has a lot to do with your heart.
Okay.
They actually give it to animals that make sure they have a healthy heart.
Oh, okay, well, thank you. It's good, so we have to eat wild leeks. Everybody has to have some.
Do you just eat the leaves?
Yeah. Yeah.
Eat the bulbs.
You can eat the bulbs, but what is happening right now, but again, you see that it's not very well known here in Missouri, but in the northeast, they may be going south, in North Carolina, for example, in Virginia, they are entire populations, like wild populations, so they're so abundant that people have what they call ramp festival is their common name for wild leek, ramp. So right now the University in North Carolina is growing it as a crop, and also is promoting. Actually, they dry them and they sell it dry, and you can really have the smell. Really, it stays for a while, but they only sell the leaves. So trying to maintain the plants. And cocktails is just, at this point, we keep saying every year, and we have Sue Bartlett, if you don't know, if you haven't met her, many of you know her. And cocktails, we keep saying every year that we're gonna gather pollen because it's so nutritious. I did it 1 year, but it wasn't enough to share it, but it was really tasty. And what you do is you gather the pollen and then you mix it with flour, and then you can use it as any flour. And I have a sample here. You can also use the rootstock. It's edible, and that can be gathered in the winter. And the shoots in the spring, they taste like asparagus. And that I have tried, and they're really tender.
There are a whole bunch of different types of cattails.
There are two kinds, and I have the 2 species. This is called Tifa latifolia, is the largest of the 2, and this is Tifa angustifolia. Similar to the leaves are, one has whiter leaves, this one, And the angustifolia has a they're very thin. And the same thing with the flowers. They are much, they are much, but they go along with the size. And one important thing is that this part is the female part, and this is the male part. So when the plant is ready to be harvested, you can see it in the next picture. So it's two species that we have here in Missouri. You can see here the male part, the female part is still green here, and this is probably shedding some pollen, or it might be too late also. But it's just you have to be right there. If it rains, you don't get it. You have to keep an eye on the plants to gather, and if you're lucky, you can get lots of pollen. And it's very nutritious. I used it in a pancake recipe, and it was just tasty. And the pancakes are a little yellow, so kind of different, but tasty. Have you had pollen?
No, I have not.
Nobody here in the room?
I wonder if a gluten-free person could use that.
I'm sorry?
Would not mix it with anything.
Yeah, it has gluten. It has gluten. That's important to know. Yes.
The pollen or just the root?
I'm sorry?
The pollen or just the root has gluten?
It's,
That flower, that's what that is?
that's Jerusalem artichoke. I don't know. I'm assuming in the whole plant. It could be, I don't know. Maybe somebody knows about that. I don't know. About where gluten is and maybe the grain. I'm assuming it would be like wheat. It would be in the grain, so it would be more in the. Maybe I would have to find out about that. I don't know. And what you see here, one question I ask to people that don't have any knowledge about native plants, I ask, do you think that Jerusalem artichoke is from Jerusalem? No. And you probably know that it's not. It's one of the crops that is actually original from this country, and even probably from all North America. But what you see here are some probably some kind of domesticated, selected varieties that came out of the store. But I can grow. You can grow this plant from the rhizome that you buy at the store, but this one came from the wild, like the ones that we're talking about. And the roots are smaller, but if they grow, if they are in good soil, they develop really well. It's just that it's a really nice taste. They have like a nutty flavor. They're good for beef stews. You can eat it raw too. It is sort of like a jicama or like a water chestnut. It's crunchy.
Oh, wow.
Does anybody here use it for cooking? Mm-hmm.
And it's also good for insulin resistance, controlling blood sugar.
Oh, that's good to know. Well, so we're learning. Thank you. And do you say that you use it?
I've used it, yeah.
So how do you cook it?
I just used it raw. Kind of tastes like a raw potato.
Uh-huh. Yeah, sometimes some people don't like it because it might be strong flavor, but it gives a really nice when you put it in meat in like a stew. It just gives it this nice flavor. But once they're cooked, they are pretty soft. So some people might not like that, but it's a nice.
You could mash them like potatoes.
Yeah, that would be a good way. It's watery when you do that. So you might, if you mix it with potato, maybe that would be a nice combination. Another plant that is also in the same, is related to Jerusalem artichoke is cup plant. We are all familiar with cup plant. And thank you, Sue, for cutting the plant. Here is a plant, and if you don't know it, how many of you did not know this plant?
I did not know that.
It's growing right now, similar as Jerusalem artichoke. It has been beautiful this year. Behind Allen, if we have time, maybe they can see, we have a whole crop.
One thing I think that's good about that plant, as far as identification goes, is you can see why the common name is called cut plant.
Yeah,
Because you
and
can
it's what we
see how
have
the-
here.
They kind
Mhm.
of form a little cup, so that's just easy for me to remember what it is when I see it.
And when it rains, it holds water like a cup. Does it
In-
have a square stem too?
Yeah, what is a square? Yeah, it has a square stem and it has another name. You know that one.
Four square.
Carpenter
Carpenter
square.
square.
Yeah, that's the other name.
Weed it when it's green.
Uh-huh.
One, one food you'll have today has it in it.
And that's a quiche.
One of the quiches has cut plant in it.
What part did you use?
In the spring, how she has new shoots and greens, you just, when the plant's small, you'll collect the fresh, young green leaves.
And what we're doing, part of what we're doing here at Lincoln also, it is in one of the beds. We prune some, but it's part of, we'll be doing it better next year. But we are cutting them, so, and then usually they recommend to gather it also only in the spring. Later they get pretty tough, but one potential way to do it is keep them pruned and also keep them in the shade so they don't get too hard. So and then you can have a source longer than spring, maybe part of the summer.
Would that grow from seed?
Yeah, but it's so abundant that maybe we can share some with you. But the seed, yeah, it grows. This is in my yard. So I had it in one spot and now it is in maybe 10. But it's easy to control because once you learn to identify it, you just pull it and just let it be. And we have a lot of shade, so this plant likes shade too, like moderate shade. And one important thing is that they're really, really attractive for butterflies. And when we used to have monarchs, because I haven't seen only one in our yard, but they were really busy in this plant. And the University of Michigan is doing some research about plants that are good for pollinators. And this one is among the 10 top plants. So it's great that it's so prolific, and good thing that not everybody likes to cut them. So if you can share the space, leave them. And this is how they look in the spring. And they have a source of vitamin A and B. And this is what we gather. And it's what Amy did use for the quiche. And we freeze them. What we do is boil them and freeze them as you would do with spinach if you had too much. And then it just stays the same. This was another recipe. We had polenta. Polenta is like tamale pie, only prepared with cornmeal. Yeah, it's like and you add eggs to make it thick.
Nice picture.
But I like it. Yeah, got those. I'm always looking for those little plates. And this is not pretty, but it's also cut plant. And then what I did is just saute it with green peppers, actually were red, and with a little bit of oil, and that's it. And it was tasty.
Yeah, I put a little vinegar in that. It's really good.
And let's see, if you can help me to pass this, I think we have plenty here. You wanna? I have 4 here.
Two more.
They have already soup.
Okay.
They give you-
Two.
Yeah.
I want to pass that because it's a plant that you have. If you see the top of at the front of your brochure, that is a golden glow. And this plant again is another member of the sunflower family. So we have lots of plants from the sunflower family that you can use for greens. this is really kind of fun because for me, this is my favorite. And Sue introduced me to that. I was, and it can be so abundant. And we have it growing also in the garden, but deer loves it. So the other name for this plant, well, golden glow is a pretty name, and when you see it in the, if you can see the picture, this is in the shade. And when you, and this is under, like in deep woods, so the flowers really glow. They're so yellow, bright. Ah, thank you. And this is a leaf of this is what you eat for, if you want to pass it. That's the golden glow. It might not taste anything, but if you, so this plant, you can gather the leaves in the woods early in the spring again. We're doing the same. That plant was eaten by deer, so it hasn't had the chance to grow too much. So it's still very soft. So we can use it for cooking. But one of the research that needs to be done, and it's one thing that we are planning to do, hopefully pretty soon, is to determine the nutrient content at different times of the year. Because we cannot recommend something if we are not sure about it. And this is where you taste the quiche later on. Similar to this one. Do you use the same, kind of same or similar recipe?
No, we use nettle, remember?
Okay. No, I don't remember. And I was in Rocheport. This is right next to the river. If you go from the Katy Trail, I don't know if you have been there recently, but if you go straight toward the river, that day, well, it was flooded early in recently, and this area was just, everything was just covered with golden glow.
Is that what we call turkey claw or something?
Do you have another name?
Cow parsley is another.
Yeah, cow parsley, and then, yeah, but let's call it golden glow.
Oh.
Well, it is prettier, but deer likes it, so we can call it deer. Deer too. And that was my husband. He comes sometimes to help me gather, but usually he's the one that takes the pictures. And common milkweed, I have, this is just for you to see, not to eat, because I'm not sure yet. I was reading in the web, but this is the web, so I'm not, they were talking about that the parts that you eat from milkweeds or other. This one is another from a vine, from honey vine. It can be toxic, but you have to cook them to eat them.
The milk part is toxic too, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can eat the flowers. You can eat the shoot early in the year, again in the spring. Almost they like asparagus, and I had tried them, but cook them. So if you want to try the pass, they have to be, first of all, they have to be very green, so they don't have the fibers. And also, they're really tasty. This particular, the common milkweed, I try it, but I'm never lucky enough to gather them when they are not too fibrous. You might need to gather them really small. But the vine, and I'm gonna pass it, this little pot that I have here is of another species in the same family. So you can eat, I mean, of course, butterflies depend on them. Right. So just have them just for fun. And as curiosity, again, going back to El Salvador, this is a species that is in the same family, in the milkweed family. It's called, the name in Spanish, we call it cuchamper. And it's a funny story because I remember when I was little, we used to say, my heart hurts. So in Spanish, we can call heart, we call it cuchamper. So it's sort of like, it's like a joke. My cuchamper hurts, is what we say. But I didn't know what cuchamper was. And then later I learned that it was this fruit And because what happens is they kind of has the same shape of a heart. So in this particular plant, maybe you see the pod, this is the pod, the green pod. Here's where the fiber will be. And it's very, I mean, it's large. And it can be eaten. I just love it because we can eat it as a vegetable. It can be eaten raw. So I'm assuming that everything that is related could be eaten. But it's one thing that we need to find out. Because you can eat this as like pickle with lemon and salt and maybe olive oil. And that's very crunchy. And it's similar to the milkweeds that we have here. It's just another species. But monarch butterflies also go to El Salvador. So we have them, and we have all different kinds of milkweeds. But this one is the edible one. So here's another type of other species of milkweeds that we have, the possum purple milkweed. They look pretty much like the one I passed, and this is the honey vine. So once we learn that this can be eaten, I think it would be good because it's so abundant. But even if you think, I know that it can be weedy, but it's, as I read a paper yesterday, that this plant, compared to common milkweed, is more nutritious. They actually evaluated the monarch butterflies, and they tested both if they were fed from milkweed, common milkweed, and from this honey vine, and they have more nutrients. This plant had more nutrients, and they were larger. So it's one good thing about weeds, and hopefully we'll be eating it pretty soon. But just wait for. Now, lamb's quarters is pretty common. Do you have it here, Amy?
Yeah, somewhere. That'll.
Yeah, I do. That's the one that everybody pulls. Yeah, that's right. It's by our natives.
It's just water, but this is lamb's quarters. We have lots in the garden, so if you want to gather some, you can help us and pick it. Did you have enough for your quiche from there?
No, the first quiche had golden glow, and the second quiche had
Kaplan. And okay. So if you want to use lamb's water instead of everything we're talking about, this one lasts all year long. And this is easy, really easy to grow. It's not native, but it is a very nutritious plant and it's very tasty too.
It's been around forever.
Yeah. It's just a big old weed.
So how do you fix it?
Same thing, you pick the leaves, boil them, or even steam them. And they soften very fast, and then you can use it as spinach for recipes. I even like it just like that. Like I just put no, I don't like them raw. I boil them and put a little bit of, cut them in pieces, make like a pesto. You're gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, she kind of just said it, but a lot of these greens she's talked about, I think of them as just a spinach substitute.
Yeah, right.
If you were to make a dish for somebody, like today, you would think that's spinach. Like you wouldn't even know the difference. So to me, it's just like free spinach.
I have one that's taller than me.
Really?
I had no
Is that
idea.
blue?
It has some very inconspicuous bloom. It's kind of whitish. And yeah, this one is not blooming yet, but it has lots of hair, so it's very easy to recognize it. And it will grow in your garden even if you don't want it. And I have my own patch in our yard because that's the one that really grows well. We try with other plants and they don't grow well. And I just want to mention, well, you saw that it contains all these elements: iron, potassium, calcium, and vitamins.
That's good. Healthy and strong right there.
And this is a pretty plant that can be also used for tea. Some people might consider it too strong. We have a sample. I think it's this one here. I have this one here too. Oh, good. So we have, that's just the leaves scratch. Here is, you probably are familiar with this one. This is more common, the most common bee balm. Monarda fistulosa. Bee balm. Or wild bergamot. And
Still smell it?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I said.
Oh, you smell it?
You told her, she told me, she'll smell it. Oh, okay.
And I don't have a picture of this one. This is dittany. When we're talking about the mint family. That's one. This is another one. It's called dittany. And I don't know if we have the recipes, but we'll share with you later. Oh, we have it. I'm gonna pass them. Why not? Would you pass them, please?
It does smell good, and I love it. I have it all over the place, ma'am. I should be using it.
Yes.
I don't know these things. I don't know what anything is.
Thank
I knew
you.
what that was.
If you see, we have 4 recipes in that card. If you see, the first one has wild leeks. Is the first one, and then if you open it, is dittany. There are crackers made with dittany. And then we have sumac, and I'll talk a little pretty soon about it. And then a persimmon recipe. We don't have the one that you're trying today. Can you tell me what time it is?
11 exactly.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to go faster. Hairy mountain mint is another plant in the mint family. And you prepare some of the hairy mountain mint? Yeah, so you're gonna try tea prepared with hairy mountain mint if you haven't done it yet. And it's probably most of you might know it. It's a really common plant, not that common, but in our brochure we have, if you open the front and then immediately after you have the bee balm. And then there is one of the mints, not this one. The hairy mountain mint is one that has pretty, as the name suggests, the leaves are very kind of hairy and soft and more aromatic than the slender mountain mint. Slender mountain mint can be used also for teas, but usually it's at the end of the year. And they're both really good for pollinators and for bees, including bees and butterflies. Somebody mentioned in another class that they were concerned that it looks that they can be invasive, but this is probably the best growth that I ever seen of a hairy mountain mint. Unless you leave it alone and you pull everything else around it, it would do well. But otherwise, the plants kind of stay in place. And the slender mountain mint can be used for more formal gardening. We'll be able to see them in the outdoor light. Here is a close-up of the flowers, similar for both. You can use the leaves and the flowers. Then we have another pair of plants that are also in the mint family. They don't have any minty smell, and they can be very, no stinky, but stingy.
Very stingy.
And so and especially, I say that all the time. I have to be sure you understand me, because sometimes it sounds like I'm saying it's stinky. Stinky. Let's see, I don't have it here.
It burns.
It's here. Yeah, you can have your This is how it looks. It's very easy to separate the two. The stinging nettle, which is the most known, it has a very narrow leaves. And then the other species, that is also called wood nettle, has a pretty broad. They seem to be less common in our areas.
Yeah, does that bloom a yellowy orange flower that kind of hangs down?
No, these are whitish flowers that grow in along the stems and maybe at the tip. Very, very tiny flowers. But you're thinking, I wonder if it
It grows like at the edge of woods into a tree.
impatience maybe? Maybe you're talking, you know, impatience? Impatience or a jewel weed is the one that has the orange flowers. So that might be, and Sue said, tell me about that, is you say that the jewel weed can be used to...
Yes, if you have that, usually they both grow in the same place, the jewel weed as well as the stinging nettle grows right beside it. So if you get stung, you can take the jewel weed and rub that sting or take the sting.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And same for poison ivy.
Okay.
So it works for poison ivy too.
In Holland, they have stinging nettle cheese.
Oh.
Delicious.
Well, if you boil, again, you have to boil it. Don't eat it raw.
Does it really work on poison?
And it's the same, I mean, for me, it's even better than any of the greens that we have talked about today. It has also a lot of nutrients. And the flavor is it's better because it's not even, it doesn't get slimy, like lamb's quarters, for example. Some people don't like this slimy texture. This is really good.
Gather it right after the first frost of the year. There's no sting.
Is that right?
Oh.
Nice
Okay,
tip.
I'll try it.
Yeah, but go with gloves just in case. Because I've done it.
Yeah.
And here is just the picture of the nettle growing with golden glow. They grow in the same habitat.
Yeah. I recognize those weeds.
And this, somebody mentioned about the passion fruit. If you're lucky enough, you can get fruits that can be edible. They can be the size of an egg, more like a goose egg than a chicken, a little large. And they never they never change colors. They're still green.
But the blossom is so fragrant.
Yeah, and this I happened to leave this plant, and I was working at MU a few years ago, and they let it grow. And they called me because they didn't know what to do with this plant. I didn't know that it was growing, it just happened to be growing. But and I mentioned that because it was growing in this very hot environment in the greenhouse all summer, it was loaded with fruits. So maybe we can do that in a hoop house.
They sell that
In the
as
summer.
a red blossom.
The-
A plant.
Uh-huh.
Type of plant, but I can't. It's all over everywhere. It comes up everywhere.
That is right.
Oh my gosh.
It is aggressive, but you can mow around it, or you can put it in a pot, large pot, and then you can control it.
Yeah.
So, but it's of course, it's good to mention that, because you need to be aware. Now, pawpaw is, how many of you have eaten pawpaw fruits? That's good. And we might have some for you in this year. As I mentioned at the beginning, we'll be making an ice cream. But it's another interesting fact. Pawpaws is some of you might know, is the only non-tropical fruit in the Annonaceae family that grows in North America. This one grows in the tropics. And if you see, I like to put that picture because if you put it together, put it in half, it just looks like the same thing. They taste the same. So one thing that I can, this tastes like home to me because it's pretty similar. And of course, we are providing habitat for the zebra swallowtail.
So what's the tree or bush or whatever it is? Pawpaw, right?
It is called pawpaw.
What's the leaves?
Oh, the leaves are, if you see, they're pretty large,
Large and kind of round?
kind of long.
Long.
And we have it in the, I don't know if we have it in the Dickinson growing. Well, we planted some here on campus and also at one of the farms, and then hopefully we'll be showing them later on. But we have some of the fruits at the other events. Didn't realize I used it was in Spanish.
Same thing.
I used that in El Salvador, so
How does the pawpaw, does it go by roots, propagate?
it can propagate from roots, yeah. Yeah, and it's why you see, you can, we have one in our yard, and it has, we had two actually, and we cut it and just likes to grow.
Okay.
But we leave it for,
in this year, I'm thinking,
yeah, if you have enough space, it's a good idea to let it be. But in our case, we live in the city, so we have to leave just one single tree, and it still produces fruit, but we share it with the raccoons and the possums. This is wild plum, recently gathered. I just saw by one of the roadsides by along 63. If you see the plum, the wild plum this year, like every fruit, there are good years and bad years. This is a really good year. It took me a while to get those plums, but because it's a lot of, there's always a lot of stuff around it. But you should gather them this year. It's plenty to share with everybody else, and I mean wildlife, because they're so abundant. And it's the best jelly. And sumac. I have a picture of the poison sumac, if some of you might be concerned, and this is just a common sumac that is growing all around us. And we have samples here too. And you're gonna try a sumac syrup, and also a sumac, maybe some of the drink. We'll see how much we got. And here is how I do it. I just gather the seed heads, cut it. I mean, just pick the main pieces. But there's usually spiders in the middle. So I leave them alone, of course. So I just pick only around it and put them back in the garden. But we gathered two kinds. This one, I think, is the one that I gathered before. It was like 3 weeks ago. It was very strong. And then, what was it, Tuesday? That we stopped at along a roadside, and the flavor wasn't that strong anymore. But I did one. I have both, so we can compare. Okay. It still has the flavor.
Do the white berries and red berries grow on the same plant, or is it or do they grow on different plants?
Let me show you. These are the two species that you should gather for drinks or syrup. They are red berries, either the wing or the smooth sumac. And you have the picture in this one is the smooth sumac that you have. This is poison sumac, so whatever is green, don't eat it. And poison ivy.
Is it on the same plant? Are they on different plants?
No, this is completely different.
Okay.
Yeah, and poison ivy is related to all the sumacs, and this one even, and it has the white berries. So this tree can be poisonous. If you are really, really poisonous, and we learned from a lady in Marshall that she's allergic even to the red sumac. So you better try in advance if you're really allergic. And sassafras, somebody was talking about sassafras. It was my first time. Sue, tell us how you did it to make it. I mean, it was so delicious. It was really fun to do it.
You identify the tree, and then you dig the roots before they leaf out in the spring, because that's when it's more concentrated. the root has more flavor in the spring before the plant leaves out. And then you boil the root. You know, you clean the root off, and then you boil it. And the first boiling, it's not as strong as the second boiling, but you have to boil it in, you know, on a low simmer for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And so you can use that same root like for 3 days. And every time you boil it, it gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and then we did this for fun. Red buds for the salad. It gives a beautiful color. And you can also use black locust flowers. And this one we haven't tried, but I was reading that the leaves can be used to make tea. And we have a lot in the garden, so we better try it maybe. And it's a nitrogen fixing plant. So besides being beautiful, brings the bees and you can have tea. And I think this is the last one. I put these last 3 because they are in the same family, in the legume family. Red bud, a tree. A lead plant is a shrub. And then you have a groundnut that is a vine. They're all in the same family. They're all edible, have some parts that are edible. And this one, we grew it, and Amy was talking about the 5 raised beds we have. This plant is growing there, but we haven't harvested. So maybe this year we can try it. And that's it.
Together. So
and your name is?
Oh, my name is Maggie Hoffer, and I am the manager of the commercial kitchen and the farmers market. And they're really integrated. We try to get, one of the goals is to get people who are doing things at the farmers market to come use the kitchen to continue on, to like make value-added products. So if they have lots of tomatoes, they might be able to turn those tomatoes into something else they can sell. Berries, all different things that they grow, then they can add value to them. And I've got a baker that's coming in to use the kitchen tomorrow to bake bread for the market on Saturday. And so it's used that way. It's also, we use it for different classes for sprouts and roots. And Extension can use it for different classes. And then we can also lease it to the public. So if someone had like a caterer that was baking stuff for a wedding and needed a bigger kitchen than he could find, this is a pretty big kitchen, so it was really nice that they could come in and use that. Several people, right now there's a guy making sauerkraut, so if you smell something a little bit funny, it's a sauerkraut fermenting back in the back. 3 weeks of sauerkraut. But then he'll be able to sell that at the farmer's market. And so that's something where he grows cabbage, he may turn it into something that he can continue to sell throughout the year after the cabbage harvest will normally happen.
So you're doing it in crocks?
Yeah, so in crocks and the whole fermenting process.
And hopefully in the future we are gonna create our own products. We don't want to compete with producers, but we create our own products here, like maybe something made with native plants, and then it will be ours.
Right, and one idea that was floated around earlier was say something that a crop that is grown for research or for study out at the farm, like the blueberries, could then be harvested and turned into something else. Because a lot of times they are testing different varieties, they harvest them, and they, we all get to share in the bounty, but if the university could then use that to maybe make its own blueberry jam or something like that, that would be a process we could use this kind of kitchen to do that in.
Yeah, so you can rent it if you want to become a vendor at the market.
Or if you just have lots of cookies to bake. I mean, there are things where you can, if you want to do that kind of thing, we've got 2 big convection ovens that can cook, bake things very quickly, 2 large ovens that fit full sheet pans, freezers, refrigerators, the whole thing, so it's nice.
But this one is just a standard quiche with, I used cup plant, the one that looks like the cup with the yellow flower. So it's just got cheese, milk, eggs, cup plant, shredded carrot, and some seasonings, things like that. This one is another quiche, and it's just got the cheese, eggs, milk. I put tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, I cut those up and put them in here. And this one has stinging nettle. I think she probably talked about that a little bit. So if you want to try them both, there's plenty of this, there should be maybe plenty of this.
Okay, got a little piece of it. Cut it up.
Yeah, you can cut up in smaller pieces so you can try them both if you want.
No crust on it?
No, I just kind of let it make its own crust. Sometimes I'll take the potatoes and slice them real thin for a crust, or, I mean, I've made it with the crust before too, but for these I just let it kind of make its own. So, flour or anything like that in it.
So it's kind of healthy.
Yeah.
And it's easy to make.
The one other thing I made, and then she can talk about hers, is for dessert. This is the first time I've made it, though. I make persimmon ice cream. So we've got little cones here, so at the end, if you want to try some ice cream, you can. It's pretty good.
Is lamb quarter quiche also?
You can make my.
No, it's for us to taste lamb quarter.
I don't have any in
I'm
mine.
sorry, I mixed the
That's
last
okay.
quarters.
So one has golden glow and one has cup plant and one has. Yeah.
So this is the golden glow stinging nettle
Yep.
in persimmon. And then you can make your own lamb's quarters with the same recipe. This is tamale pie.
Oh, okay.
And it just has corn flour and some eggs, lots of tomato sauce with the tomatoes that I grow in the community garden. And you might have some at the end of the day if you stay. There's plenty. Would they be plenty?
Tomatoes and take tomatoes and peppers home.
So, and I put just some cheese. This recipe, we don't have it printed, but I can do it for you if you like it.